You're now watching Sports Bettor's Paradise on the BetRivers Network.
All right, Jimmy out along with Paul Stone as we look at college basketball handicapping approaches. And, a lot of the things we've been talking about have been coming into fruition. The hangover effect for a lot of teams, there's no doubt. I want to ask you one thing, though, Paul. If, the court rush fade, when the team court, they rush the court after a big win, we like to, it's not an autoplay, but just about an autoplay the next time. It's emotion. You left a little emotion on the field. After Detroit Mercy's win last night for their first one to improve to 1-26, there was one gentleman who rushed the court. Does that qualify, Paul?
I don't know. I saw that. That was one win and one court rusher. So I don't know how that falls into the handicapping puzzle, but I'm sure we could force in some relevance. But yeah, Detroit, I think they were a 5.5-point favorite, actually.
They were. That was a big topic of discussion. How can a no in 2016 be 5.5? Well, they won by double digits. That's how. So we call those the stinky lines, that sometimes you got to look a little deeper into. All right, what we want to talk about today is we're getting closer to March Madness and maybe some under-the-radar teams to look out for in March. Maybe at BetRivers there are regular season conference championship odds, not just the tournament. So that's one of the menu items that we have. That's right, and also Final Four odds, and we could talk about some of those as well. Let's start off with a team that I'm not sure if they qualify or not as being under the radar. They've been damn hot. They've been very dependable. I can tell you that. Our producer, Max, has been on them for quite some time. Did have to fade them last Friday night against that VCU. That was a tricky trip, and that was you talk about a game in the mud, 49-48 at Dayton, just lost at VCU. But their NET is 19. Their Ken Palm is 21. Their Lenardi, the latest Lenardi ranking, bracketology, is 4. So what, just being an A-10 team, being a non-power 6 team that includes the Big East, why did you choose the Dayton Flyers?
Yeah, I just think this is a team. I kind of looked at 4 teams that I think might outperform expectations. And even though the expectations are high for Dayton, one thing I like about them, and the primary thing most people who like Dayton like about them, is their third-year starting forward, Darian Holmes, the second. He's just, maybe the best, off the top of my head, certainly one of the best mid-major players in the entire nation. Averages 19.6 points, almost 8 rebounds a game. And, again, just a big-time player, 6'10", 235, really artful around the basket. A complete player, averages 2.5 assists a game, also almost 3 blocks a game. So when you got that big-time, big game player, I like that centerpiece in the tournament. And, I think if they get to the Sweet 16, I think that would be, even though they're projected right now by Lenardi as a 4 seed, I think that would be pretty much holding serve. I think that would be a good performance. 22-4 on the season, 3 of their losses by 5 points or fewer. Those losses being to Northwestern, Richmond, and as you mentioned, this past Friday to VCU. The Flyers' other loss to Houston by 14. They lost 69-55 there in Charleston right before Thanksgiving. One drawback for Dayton that might not be so much of a drawback during the tournament is they're not very deep. In that game against VCU, the loss on the road there in Richmond, only 6 players logged double-digit minutes. So they only had 6 players who played more than 8 minutes. But with all the breaks in action in the tournament and just kind of the pace of play, I think a team can mask its lack of depth, if you will, in the NCAA tournament. They're currently tied atop the A-10 standings, along with Loyola Chicago at 10-2. The Flyers travel to Loyola on March 1st. But I'm going to go ahead and take a shot on the Flyers to win the regular season Atlantic 10 title. They're at BetRivers, the line currently minus 121. I just think Dayton's the best team in that league. And again, I think they're going to make the Sweet 16. So I'll take Dayton minus 121 to win the A-10.
They've certainly been one of the more dependable teams over the last 10 or 15 games. I've been putting them into money line parlays and things like this, even when I didn't like the lines. And we've been betting them for a while as well. Dayton would like to improve on the road, though. 5-3 away from home. We know the first 4 is never going to move out of Dayton because they pack that place. They support their college basketball in Dayton, Ohio, undefeated at home at 12-0 this year. So they are tied with Loyola Chicago, as Paul mentioned, and a half game up on the Spiders of Richmond that are 9-2. So even in the loss column there. But the Dayton Flyers, I cannot believe that's the same team that I saw basically a 50-50 game, a 3-point game against a not-so-good LSU team earlier in the year. This just in. Basketball in February and March is a little bit different than November. So classic case right there. All right, here's one right down the road from me. And, well, I don't know if Will Wade wants me back in the building because I snapped the longest winning streak in college basketball when I went to Hammond, and they got upset by Southeastern Louisiana. Southeastern, to give you an idea, they shot the lights out, 7 for the first 10 from three-point range in that game. They held on for the victory. NET, not crazy about them, 60. Ken Palm, you say 69? Yeah, okay. Lenardi has them as an automatic qualifier, 12 seed right now. But the Ken Palm, we mentioned, the biggest improvement from year to year, they are number 1, the biggest improvement. 2 teams that you highlighted previously on one of our podcasts, McNeese State, biggest improvement. Second biggest improvement is High Point from year to year's Ken Palm. What do you like about Will Wade's first year in Lake Charles and the McNeese State Cowboys?
I'll tell you, we did talk about McNeese State earlier this season on the podcast, and you mentioned first-year head coach Will Wade, formerly at VCU and LSU, among his coaching stops there. They play in the Southland Conference, does McNeese State. I think it's fair to say one of the nation's weaker leagues, but they're 20-3 on the season. And college basketball fans, they got a glimpse of what this McNeese State team can do earlier in the year. 3 convincing road victories, and it's just hard for me not to fall back on those 3 earlier road victories. They don't get many opportunities to play, more major schools than they are. But they went to VCU, went to UAB, went to Michigan. They beat all 3 of those schools by double digits, beat them by a grand total of 43 points. So really decisive road victories over quality opponents. And to put those wins into perspective, Jimmy, VCU, they just beat, as we mentioned, nationally ranked Dayton by 2 on that same home floor. And then you look at UAB, just in the past 2.5 weeks on their home floor, they've defeated both Memphis and last year's Final Four darling Florida Atlantic on their home floor, lost by 21, I believe, to McNeese State. So, this is a good basketball team, and we talk about that outstanding guard play during the tournament. And McNeese State certainly has that, led by TCU transfer Shahada Wells, averages 17.3 points a game, 5 rebounds, just a tremendous all-around player as well, 3 steals a game, 5 assists a game. And he's been his best, Wells has, in the big game setting on the road. So I think that translates well into the NCAA tournament. In those three road victories we earlier mentioned, a total of 89 points for Wells. The Southland Conference tournament, even, they do, I think it would be to their advantage, obviously, to go ahead and win that tournament, which is played on their home floor there in Lake Charles, Louisiana. So I think McNeese State, they're not going to, I'm not saying they're necessarily going to make the Sweet 16, but I think they're going to outperform expectations as a 12 seed right now by Joe Lenardi. I think they might be a classic if they do land on that 12 line, might be that classic 12 seed over 5 seed team. So I think they're going to win a game in the tournament. And of course, it depends on the matchup, but I think McNeese State, they've played on the road, they've won some road games, and they've got that great guard in Wells. So I like the Cowboys.
They won another game outside of the conference in Hattiesburg against Southern Miss, just to throw it in there by double digits as well. Not the caliber of team that you're talking about, but still, and he's got a couple of kind of got a little in-your-face bad boy type of image to, a couple of 6'9", 240, 250 guys that rotate, and they don't mind getting in your face a little bit from time to time. So it will be interesting if it's 1 or 2 years at McNeese State, but Lake Charles is not the last stop for Will Wade. All right, Grand Canyon. This is one of the conference you talk about. You cannot follow all of the conference and study them in 10. This is one of the conference, Grand Canyon, from one of the conferences that you do pay close attention to. Their NET's 44, Ken Palm 52. Joe Lenardi has him in his latest bracketology as an automatic qualifier as an 11 seed, Grand Canyon.
Yeah, Lenardi, of course, it's going to be hard. As good of a job as Joe Lenardi does, especially on seeding, it would be hard to hit the exact matchup. And I don't know what region it's in, but he currently has them as the 11 seed, as you said, playing Kentucky. That would be a heck of a first-round game. But the Antelopes of Grand Canyon seeking their second straight berth this season in the NCAA tournament. Last year, they played Gonzaga in the opening round, trailed the Zags by just 2 points 2 minutes into the second half, ultimately lose that game 82-70. Much of that team back this year, and I wouldn't be surprised to see again the Antelopes exceed expectations by winning a first round game as a double-digit seed. Again, like a lot of mid-major programs, Grand Canyon, they don't get a whole lot of shots at high-profile schools, but they did get its first ever win over a ranked opponent earlier this year at home. Beat nationally ranked San Diego State, which made the national championship game last year, beat the Aztecs 79-73 on their home floor as a 2.5-point underdog at home. And then they came back 4 days later, traveled across country to Lynchburg, Virginia, beat a pretty good Liberty team on its home floor by 5 points. So I like that stretch there. It's 2 losses by 5 to South Carolina in the Arizona tip-off early in the season, and then lost by 7 at conference rival Seattle. And that was a game Seattle hit 10 of 20 from three-point territory, so they were hot from long distance. A little bit of a side note, Bryce Drew is the coach there at Grand Canyon. Obviously comes from a prominent basketball family there in Indiana, well known for those of us who have followed college basketball for a while. He hit what I think is called the shot back in 1998 from beyond midcourt to defeat Ole Miss, I believe it was, in that tournament game. So he's kind of woven into the history of the NCAA tournament. Some speculation that Drew might get a Power 5 job in the offseason, but it's not a given he would leave. They have got tremendous resources there at Grand Canyon. When they signed him and hired him back in the spring of 2020, he signed a $16.3 million contract for 6 years. So just a little side note there. I like Grand Canyon to perhaps win a game in the NCAA tournament as well.
Antelopes like the Liberty of that part of the country. Man, got a little small upstart program, but still putting some money into it. No doubt about that. Well, you've gone from your mid-majors, your obscure teams, the Antelopes, to the Longhorns. Now, this is not exactly an under-the-radar team, but, we were all skeptical about, Chris Beard's successor and Terry. And, man, they've got some nice road wins. But you're looking at the University of Texas, 20-1 to make it to the Final Four right now. Number 31 NET, 25 Ken Palm. Wasn't always a given that they were going to be in the tournament, but they've got a lot of room, a lot of cushion right now. And I go to some of those close games on the road, Paul. I mean, that's where they really impress me, where home court is always tough, and I think even tougher this particular season. But you like the Longhorns number 8 seed right now for Joe Lenardi's bracketology.
Yeah, this is a Texas team that probably, if you had to say to this point in the year, if they've been a positive or a negative, you'd have to put them in the category of a disappointment. They're only 16-8. They're 5-6 in Big 12 play. The Big 12 arguably the top basketball league in the nation, but they just really hadn't found their groove yet. But this is a Texas team that just came an eyelash. They made the Elite Eight last year, came an eyelash of making the Final Four, actually led Miami by double digits with under 9 minutes to go. Ultimately lost to the Hurricanes 88-81, kind of fell apart there at the end. But this season, again, they hadn't found their stride, so to speak. Only 2-4, as you mentioned, in home games in the Big 12. The Big 12, though, a very tough league, playing really well on the road. They have impressive road victories in Big 12 play at Cincinnati, Oklahoma, and TCU. The latter of those two teams, both nationally ranked at the time Texas came onto their home floor and defeated them. And the reason I like Texas as a potential, semi-sleeper, you might say, is the fact that it has multiple players who can take over a game on the offensive end. And the chief of those is 6'9" senior forward Dylan Dessou. When healthy, which he struggled with injury problems the last couple of years, when he's healthy, he's one of the better players in the country. I mean, he's a big-time player. Last season, he really played well until he got hurt there, I think, early in the Xavier victory in the tournament. But you look at the last month or so and change, Dessou, he started to hit his stride, find his offensive game over the last 7 games, averaging over 20 points and 6 rebounds a game. So I like where he is. And a lot of people probably don't know that Texas has the leading active all-time career scoring leader in the NCAA in Oral Roberts transfer, Max Abmas. Abmas currently 12th on the NCAA's all-time career scoring list. This is his 5th season. He took advantage of that COVID year. But this year, some of the guys that he passed on that all-time, he's a three-point specialist. Some of the guys he passed on that list this year, names like Larry Bird, Oscar Robertson, Elvin Hayes, and J.J. Redick. So those are some pretty good. They only had the advantage of 4 seasons, but some pretty good names there. Abmas averages 17.7 points a game. He has scored in double digits in all 24 of Texas's games, so he's a consistent scoring threat. They also have Tyrese Hunter and Dylan Mitchell both averaging over 11 a game, so they have some multiple scoring options. Really like Dessou and Abmas. They played well on the road, beat some good teams on the road. I like Texas at 20-1 to make the Final Four.
Yeah, beat Cincinnati, Oklahoma, TCU in conference all on the road this year, and yeah, I can admit I had Miami in that tournament game last year. Very fortunate in that one. They were dead in that game against Texas last year. A couple that I thought of, Paul, is Northwestern, who again, projected 11 seed for Lenardi right now, and they might not even get in. NAT's 56, Ken Palm's 47, unspectacular. But I love their efficiency. I love Boo Buie. He, the redshirt senior from Albany, is legit. I mean, he could take over a game. I like guards in a tournament. I know I'm not the first to say that, but he shoots over 40% from 3. He handles it. He could create in the mid range. They only have 1 conference road win to this point, but they're 7th in the country in 3-point percentage, number 2 in assist-to-turnover ratio. But they did have a blow. They lost their one of his backcourt men, a guy that shoots over 44% from 3-point range. You were telling me before off the air.
Yeah, Ty Berry, who averages almost 12 points a game. A very efficient 3-point shooter, gives Northwestern, along with Boo Buie, one of the top guard tandems in the country. But so that's a blow. But I know these injuries sometimes as handicappers through the years, I'm sure you've noticed this. Sometimes you have what appears to be a significant loss, and a team might not really ever lose its stride. Then other times you have a player who maybe looks like a 20-minute-a-game guy who averages 6 points and 4 rebounds a game, and they just fall apart. The cohesiveness and the rotation and what have you, the togetherness has kind of been broken down. So we'll have to see, what they look like after this injury. But it certainly appears to be a fairly significant injury. But like you said, Boo Buie, one of the best all-around players, all-around guards in the entire nation. He is even though he's not at Kentucky or a Duke, you might think of Northwestern and not think that some of the best basketball players in the country reside there. But there are a few better at the guard position this season than Boo Buie. So I certainly could see Northwestern with that very positive assisted turnover.
Let's pay close attention to them right now and see how because this is a high level of execution right now, what they're running. Collins is doing a good job with them, but that experience is – I mean, that's unbelievable. 7th at 3-point percentage and number 2 out of 360 teams in assist-to-turnover ratio. But let's see if one of those guards missing. Sometimes I like to go the fallen hero effect. Short term, I think it can be a rallying point. Long term, it's going to take its effects. That's my standard approach. But as you said, you'll see varied approaches when it comes to that. But the biggest one, my favorite game for them was a loss at Purdue. Hey, it's a hell. There ain't many people that go into that building against that team this year and play them like that. Could have easily won the game. Next one is New Mexico, another projected 11 seed by Leonardo. You want guards in March? Well, how about 3 of them? And we know about Jamal Mashburn Jr., but House and Dent make up a trio of guards that can go for 20 at any given night. They really have a lot of explosive elements. My biggest concern for them, now look, any team at Ken Palm, love them. 21 and 23 right there. So they're probably in already a little bit lower seed for most teams with those metrics. But getting away from the pit, man, they are tough at the pit. I know they dropped one to UNLV recently, but I want to see them in different ones, in different settings. So that's my concern with them. And then another one that's a blue blood. No obscure team here, but Michigan State. Oh, yes, here we go again. Izzo time, the whole bit. After the rough start, I wanted to watch them because, we identified them as a team that had a chance. 22 NET, Ken Palm 15. Now, they won 7 of their last 9. And their ball movement and their level of execution is starting to improve. 50% over 50% field goal percentage in their last 2 games, and they've got 3 guys in Hall, Walker, and Hoggard rather. They're capable of going off at any time. All of these guys have hit right around 30-point games recently. Yeah, I know it's not exactly. It's become cliche. A branding Izzo time, but still, I kind of look for the Spartans. And look, they knocked off the Marquette last year in the tournament, and I think they're kind of getting just into that form again here in the latter parts of February. Any thoughts on New Mexico, Michigan State? I'm sorry, Paul.
Oh, I didn't know if you were going to go to me, but I was just going to say Michigan State, some people I really respect thought Michigan State was one of the very top teams in the nation at the start of the season. And like you said, they came out of the gate really sputtering, but certainly Tom Izzo's been magical in March at times. And then that New Mexico team and just that Mountain West Conference as a whole. Some are still projecting the possibility of 6 tournament teams. They're probably going to end up with 5 bids. And one of those teams is not, unless they win the tournament, UNLV. But UNLV, like you said, they've snuck up and they've shown some tenacity in individual games. So Mountain West, one of the funner, more balanced at the top leagues in the entire nation this year.
It really is. I think they might beat each other up a little bit on this one. It might even be 4, but it's not going to get below 4. Thing is, they lose those games. It doesn't kill their power ratings. It's not the typical, like McNeese State loses Southeastern, and that kind of almost kills their chances because if they don't win, to get an automatic bid, they would have lost another one in, such a weak conference as the Southland. So interesting stuff. But yes, the Mountain West is a strong league. Great atmospheres for games. And you mentioned that UNLV, they swept New Mexico already in that home-and-home series. Each and every week, Paul Stone and I, we break down, we'll give you a little handicap approaches. We're going to get into those bubble teams soon, and whether you back them or fade them and things like that with maybe inflated lines and things like that a little bit later, all the way through March Madness. For Paul Stone, I am Jimmy Ott. This is the Sports Bettor's Paradise on the BetRivers Network.